Welcome. Gio and I are here with Ann Olsen. She is sitting in their Salt Lake City location of The Shop, which is the co-working brand that is owned by the domain companies. And Ann is the director of co-working. And you are also a board member of Lexi. So I get to sit on officer calls with you when I show up to the officer calls. So thanks for joining us. I love your background. I didn't know anything about your background, so I can't wait to have this conversation. If you're watching on YouTube, Gio has the shop Salt Lake City in his background, and it is a lovely location. We get to visit. Wait, Juicy was in Salt Lake. Was that last time? Was that
Yep,
last?
it was.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
lose
it
track.
Last
feels
year?
like
Last
years ago.
year?
Yeah, but it
Last
was
year.
barely in Salt Lake. Yeah.
Yeah, we get to have a meeting there, and your whole like snack bar, coffee bar situation is really fabulous. Great
Yeah, you got
snacks.
it.
You have, like, the milk frother. So
Yep.
I'm a, cappuccino a day girl, and so I love it when I can make one. You did have to show me, like, how your equipment works because it's
Yeah,
a bit of a thing. Yeah.
the Spurs are a little tricky, but they're worth it for
Yeah,
sure.
totally. So I love it. Okay, so you're open so the shop has locations in Salt Lake City, New Orleans, and you said opening in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
That's exciting. So talk about the parent company and why it is that we have 3 locations in 3 totally different cities.
Yeah, such a great question. So the domain companies has been around for about 20 years. We actually just celebrated our 20th year last year. And our founders are originally from New York and actually both went to Tulane. So they have really deep ties to New Orleans. They both now live in New Orleans. And between the two, it felt like there was so much opportunity to improve the community here in New Orleans, as well as obviously tons of development opportunity in New York City. And then Salt Lake had this kind of like great skiing moment, but also this, like,
True?
great development opportunity, and that's where, I'm originally from Salt Lake, and that's where I got connected with the company just about 5 years ago. So, they've really been expanding, but their bread and butter is multifamily, and the shop is, slowly becoming a larger part of that portfolio.
So in Salt Lake, it is part of the shop is part of like a multi-use building, right? Because you've got the food. What do you call? Like it's a little
Yeah.
food
So it's
court
like
hall next door.
Yeah, so the shop in Salt Lake City is an anchor in the Exchange, which is a larger mixed-use development that we developed using the RDA or like redevelopment agency land in Salt Lake City in partnership with another local developer. And we have a combination of over 400 apartment units ranging from like studio to 3 bedrooms, as well as 7 retail spaces. So the one that you're referencing, is a food hall, larger restaurant, kind of food and beverage offering. We also have a Pilates studio, and at the base of the shop, we actually have the University of Utah Center for Medical Innovation, where they're doing all
Wow.
sorts of things I don't understand, but it's like 3D printers and laser cutters, and it's cool to have this like 5-minute city, like everything kind of situated together, which is what we're trying to emulate also in New Orleans and in Brooklyn.
Gio, do you not want Anne to be the spokesperson for your company?
Yeah.
Right? She's so
I'm
like
literally writing down Ann Olsen, San Francisco, GWA Immersive.
I know. Wait, so Anne, tell us about your personal background.
Yeah, I would love to. So I've been in co-working about 8 years. Before I was in co-working, I was always in community building. So my very first
That
job when I
was
was
the thread I noticed. I was like, "Oh,
yeah,
this is
I
like
love people.
her thing." Yeah.
Yeah, so back in college, I worked at the Women's Center at Weber State University, so go Wildcats, but little kind of college town, Ogden, Utah. And then I had my first job out of school at Slug Magazine, which is it stands for the Salt Lake Underground. It is, this like local free magazine that covers all sorts of things from like, there's a beer issue and a distillery issue to a skateboarding issue and snowboarding competitions. And I got exposed to so many really remarkable people and all the cool parts of Salt Lake City. I think it's no surprise that there's this, I guess I'll call it a stigma around Salt Lake City, right? Like it's seen as one very certain kind of place. But when you really dig in and understand all of the amazing, cool things that people are doing, it really makes you just fall in love with it. And Slug really helped kind of anchor my love to Salt Lake City. But, it was time to move on. And I was introduced to co working through Kiln, which is a brand local to Salt Lake City. They've done a ton of expansion on the West Coast. They just every time I turn around, they have a new location. It's really amazing what Aaron and that team has done. But I think from their launching Kiln at the Gateway in Salt Lake City, one of their like very first locations, I just absolutely fell in love with co-working. It felt when I was a kid, I'm sure I said I like wanted to be a cat when I grew up, right? Like you can never pinpoint co-working when you're younger because it's still so new, right? But then it felt like this combination of all these things that I really loved and getting to connect with people and build partnerships while also kind of like getting that like finance, like budget, like things are working together on the job too, which is, secretly a fun thing for me. But all together, that kind of led me to co-working. And after a couple of years with Kiln, the domain companies approached me about joining the shop. And I came in when the concrete was poured, and it's been fun ever since.
We actually have area and all beyond, I guess, in a few
I
weeks.
saw
So
that. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
excited
we've
about
got things
that.
scheduled.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that kiln
Um,
location is big in Salt
Yeah.
Lake. It's a large location. Yeah.
When he
Also,
was there, it was the 30,000, then they expanded after I left.
okay, got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, Geo, jump in.
so are you originally from Salt Lake City?
No, I grew up on a farm in Minnesota, in, like, the middle of nowhere, place called Cambridge, like, an hour and a half north of Minneapolis, and I moved when I was 13, and when you're 13, it's your job to hate things, right? So, like, I hated Salt Lake for a really long time.
I have a
Um,
13-year-old. I know how this is.
it's like it is your only goal in life to, like, try to find a hot topic and to hate things, like, that's all you have. So, I've been in Salt Lake for a long time since, but I've been, very fortunate in my current position to spend more time in New Orleans, and of course, I'll be spending plenty of time in Gowanus, Brooklyn.
Are you
So
like the launch manager for the Brooklyn location?
I'm trying to find one right now, but
Okay,
until I find one, I am that person. Yeah.
that's your hat. Add it to the list of Anne's hats. Yeah.
Yeah, good one. Yeah.
So we're going to replace a negative with a positive. So as a teenager, your job was to hate stuff. So at what point did you become passionate about people?
I really think I became passionate about people when I was in school, college specifically. I think having the opportunity through my job there, I worked at a women's center. I was working with all different types of women from different backgrounds and different situations. And I'd always been very like pulled to like nonprofit advocacy work, supporting communities. I did a lot of organizing with Amnesty International and with Planned Parenthood. And through my work there, I really just found like I want to serve people and I want to understand what that means. And I also love hospitality. I love gift giving. It's like definitely my love language to come up with like that perfect gift. So surprising and delighting members is like my favorite thing in the world. And again, just getting to really like listen to someone and get that deal done and help them feel taken care of. It's like it's infectious. You just want that feeling over and over and over again.
Wow. I love that.
Yeah.
And it spills over in the hospitality side of stuff, right? Which spills into the staff that works under you and everything else.
Wait, speaking of, tell us specifically, so you started out as a community manager and then director of co-working. What does director of co-working mean? What hats do you wear?
Yeah, so as director of co-working, I'm responsible for all of our current active sites. So I manage the teams in New Orleans and also in Salt Lake City, make sure that the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, that they're making money, people are having a good time. And then beyond that, I'm responsible for all new development. So we're at a really, really exciting juncture for the shop right now. We're really focused on growth. We opened New Orleans in 2017. We opened the shop in Salt Lake in 2021. And then another 4 years later, we're opening Brooklyn. But there's opportunities for us to open additional shop locations this year, next year. We're really focused on some strong, dedicated growth across both New York and then some of our existing markets as well. So that's also what I'm doing. A lot of
Okay.
models. I'm really learning financial models. So management agreements, my ChatGPT and Google search history looks insane.
Well,
But
where's the finance come from? That's not in your undergrad, right? Are you
no,
sort of self-teaching? You did say you
yeah,
sort of secretly love spreadsheets, so that sounds
I
like
do. Yeah.
okay.
I call on my dad a lot, which I'll have to throw in the mix there. But we have such an incredible team at Domain. It's so nice to be supported by
Mm,
a larger, like more established company. So we have an amazing development and finance team that like I was just on a call earlier with one of our development analysts, and I'm like, okay, can you break down that total versus incremental return thing to me again so I can make a little comment on my spreadsheet and pretend like I know what I'm talking about? So, self-taught, incredible team supporting me throughout that, and then also, not afraid to phone a friend.
Speaking of, Geo has a master's in real estate finance if you ever need any spreadsheet help. He loves spreadsheets.
I will connect you with Nick Bratton very quickly, and he
I
will
love
help
to
you
out
any
him.
way, which way you want.
I'll take
Um,
anything. Yeah, I love it.
Well, I mean, the domain companies obviously is like you said, it's an apartment developer. I mean, obviously with that, more and more we're seeing retail come with apartments because there's a lot of municipalities that require that. And so it's tough space. Is that part of, I mean, where did it come from that they wanted to jump into the flexible workspace world? And what's what's the evolution there? I mean, is the plan to have it in all the developments going forward, or kind of what's the growth model and strategy?
Yeah, so happy to kind of break that down a little bit. Flex office is something that came into Domain's kind of art mind's eye, I'd say, in like the early 2010s. Our CEO, his sister actually was working from a WeWork in New York City in like the earlier days. And, coming from real estate, hospitality, we have a couple of like food and beverage assets, a couple hotels. There was definitely the sentiment like there's a good competitor in all of us, right? And it was like, well, we could do this better, right? So the opportunity presented itself with the CAC, our location in New Orleans. It's the CAC is the Contemporary Art Center. And it's this, beautiful building. It was originally like a pharmaceutical factory. And the top two floors had been abandoned since the 70s when the Contemporary Art Center moved in. And no one could figure out a thing that would make it work. And it's like, oh, it's a like, gorgeous exposed brick and all these original windows and wood floors. And we're like, this makes sense to do a flex workspace in. Originally, it was just going to be the one, and it went really well. It made a lot of sense, and it was, the good move. And then we decided to do Salt Lake City. That's kind of where I joined the picture. And more, it just becomes this. It's very evident that flex space is like the future of office, and that can come in a lot of different ways. And it's natural to combine with our residential portfolio because inevitably, like, why get a two bedroom if you could get a one bedroom and a one person office? So there's like this really great kind of like connection that's just built in. And then from a growth perspective moving forward, it is always a consideration when we're developing additional real estate and residential components, but we're also starting to see the shop more as an entity and a brand that could stand alone. So like we're identifying a couple of opportunities in New York now and some of the different boroughs where we likely would not have a residential component, but we believe that our brand is strong enough to stand alone in those markets, and then it's just kinda like a bonus if you're close to the apartments.
There you go. Well, I mean, I think it's so interesting as developers, both retail, office, multifamily, and even now we're seeing more industrial, how they're looking at the flex world as being part of their overall ecosystem that they're creating. And Jamie and I are good friends with Mara and her team over at 25. And that's kind of, they've done an incredible job in doing some of that stuff, both in Chicago and the suburbs and here in Dallas. So it's been fun to watch.
For sure.
So, okay, you talked about kind of your financial acumen development, but you also started as a community manager and now you manage locations and you're, kind of on the growth team. How have you sort of developed professionally over time? Like mentors, training, like what does that look like for you? I think people listening, like what's the career path for the community manager, right? Like you're such a cool example of where you've taken your career. I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I think there are a couple of things that help me kind of make this move. I think having just like a general relentless approach to everything, I think serves me well. I'm like a very stubborn, very competitive person. And like I want the best for the shop and I also want the best for myself. So as a result, I'm constantly trying to just stay as up to date with everything that's going on in the industry, taking in any piece of content I can get, taking any opportunity I can get, and just making sure that I'm well positioned when a question is asked to give the best answer possible. And if you can do that over and over, like growth comes naturally. And I think here at Domain, knowing that I was getting in at that second location, that additional growth was on the horizon, that I feel very fortunate in a lot of ways that the role was kind of made for me and in response to what I was able to bring to the table. So I definitely think from a growth perspective, like when I was at Kiln, I was a community specialist, right? So I've had this really fun kind of like evolution into, manager and now director and being focused on making sure that you're bringing value and able to look at it from 5,000 feet and from 5 feet. You got to be dynamic, but once you get there, everything kind of falls into place.
Okay, I'm gonna ask a geo question before Geo can jump in.
Mm.
Ready? Okay. What kind of farm did you grow up on?
Hobby farm. So I like
Yeah.
showed sheep age kind of a thing. We had like
Oh.
horses, cows, a little bit of everything.
Okay, but hobby farm, like your family did something else for
Yeah, like my parents,
jobs.
commuted in Minneapolis and worked full time.
Okay, but still, what would you say growing up sort of in that environment, how did that impact kind of who you are?
I really like that question. I think kind of like a cheater's answer here is like we didn't really have internet or cable. Like I just spent most of my time as a kid like outside solving problems. And my parents both worked full time. I'm the youngest of four. So we were left to our own devices quite a bit, which I think
With animals
yeah,
and
all
land.
sorts of weird kid stuff like playing Fear Factor. We're like, it's all made up. But I think those things really helped shape me into who I am today as far as like never wanting to like bump into a problem that I couldn't solve. And I think part of living in the middle of nowhere when you really just are left to your own devices again, like really has led to that ability of just like, well, what's next? Like I'm not gonna just like sit and melt my brain in front of a TV, though like I love some time on Instagram. I'm not gonna, front there. I think that kind of like young approach to solving problems is really great. And then even when I was a kid, I did like Girl Scouts, I did 4-H, and it was my responsibility every year, like take care of animals and show them at the
Mhm.
county fair. And like to be doing that from the age of like 7, like you really get familiar with those things and kind of like, okay, I'm given this rubric. I know what this person wants from me. Like, how do I deliver? And constantly taking that like equation and applying it to everything in life has been I never thought those portable skills from 4-H would come in so many years
We're
later.
gonna send this clip to them. They'll love it. Okay.
So were you homeschooled?
I was not homeschooled, no.
Okay.
I did take the bus, and the bus was usually like, wind chill,
45 minutes. So long.
negative 30 degrees, you're on the
Yes,
bus for
right?
hours, it's freezing cold, and yeah.
Well, the reason I ask is because I've got some of my godchildren are homeschooled and they do 4-H. Do you
Uh,
remember, Jamie? I bought a turkey this year and I bought a pig last year, and this was outside of Colorado, outside of Denver, and I was like, "How am I getting a pig?" Literally, I went and I was like, "I am not buying an emotional support pig." And then I bought it, and then come to find out, I'm like, "What happens now?" They're like, "Oh, it goes straight to slaughter." I'm like, "How am I getting a 300-pound pig?" I want to say it was just shy of 200 pounds of
that's a
meat that I had
big
to.
pig. It's a
Yeah,
lot
that's
of
a
Well,
commitment.
bacon, Geo.
You get another deep freezer or what?
well, I wasn't gonna drive all the way there to bring it. And I already had two big old freezers, so I gave a bunch of it away. And if you remember, Jamie, I backpacked a bunch in. So I'm a hunter, and so sometimes I backpack food in. But
Mm.
like, as long as it's frozen, you can carry it in your backpack.
Oh, yeah.
And
Okay.
so, Jamie, I think I told you that last time Zach was here, and Zach does all our videography for GWA. He shot his first deer, and he lives in Nashville. So I had my processor process it all within a week, and I literally humped in 40 pounds of venison into Nashville. I literally my bag's going through a security check, and they're like,
The human body or what do you got going on here?
Totally.
but yeah, I mean, I just think 4-H is an amazing program. So I've gone the last 2 years and watched the young children and even teenagers show those animals, and it's just incredible the showmanship that goes into it and just how much the entire community comes around that.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate for that to have been how I got to grow up in a lot of ways. And then right around that like 13 line is when I moved to what I call a big city, which is hilarious because it's Salt Lake City. And then now I'm in New York and it takes me a full 24 hours to be like, there's so many people here. Like, okay, I'm good. Like, let's move forward. Yeah.
So
I
you
grew
live in New York? Sorry.
No, you're fine. I split my time between Salt Lake City and New York, and then I'll also travel to New Orleans, but I'm still like I'm based in Salt Lake,
Okay.
fiance's in Salt Lake, dogs in Salt Lake. There. Yeah.
Okay.
What kind of
Jamie, go.
dog?
Sorry.
Oh, 80-pound super mutt named Tennessee. He's all sorts of things,
Super mutt.
but he's the best. Yeah. He's great.
That's amazing.
Wait, are you dog friendly? Does he get to come to work?
We are dog friendly, though he does not come to work with me. He is a fantastic guard dog, but sometimes he guards my office a little too loud. So you gotta,
That's hilarious.
you
Yeah.
gotta be a little more self-aware. But luckily I live very close, to where the shop is. It's just, right across
Really
the street, actually. So
nice. Okay.
I get dock breaks when I need them.
Geo, Anne interviewed Laura Kay on our Lexi call last week, and she was exceptional. It was a great conversation. So if you need a moderator, Anne is top notch. Well, I'm curious, since you got to interview Laura Kay, how do you guys think about or structure sales? Do you have an over now that you're about to be 3 locations, are you starting to think about, like, different organizational structures? It's kind of a jump from 2 to 3. I'd love to hear anything you're interested in sharing.
Yeah, I'm so happy to talk more about it. So, sales for me, that is definitely where I feel like my bread and butter is. I get pulled most of sales over operations when you kind of think of the two main ships a co-working space
Yeah.
requires. So, to date, a lot of that sales activity has been driven by me. I am a firm believer that commission is not good for small teams, which I realize is different, than how other people might operate. But I never wanted a team that's so tiny to be fighting over deals. It never felt very advantageous or really helpful in the long run for me personally. So as we continue to grow, we'll definitely maintain that approach where it's not commission based. Obviously, there's incentives for end of year bonuses, but you win as a team, you lose as a team kind of a thing. And then as we continue to expand to larger spaces or having additional locations, we are really starting to explore some more economies of scale. So not sales related, but size and team structure related. We've actually pivoted from having 3 full-time people in Salt Lake City to 2 full-time and 1 part-time. So we're also trying to understand and play around with what does the site really need from a staffing
Yeah.
perspective to be effective and making sure that everyone is firing on all cylinders and not just solving problems by hiring people instead of solving the problem. And then from this doesn't always work like that. Then you have this massive PNC line on your expenses and you're like, what am I doing here? But that tangent aside, I think there's also with additional locations looking into people who are dedicated to marketing, dedicated to sales. Again, with the backing of the domain companies, we've been so fortunate to have a lot of that support, even though we're, kind of a tiny,
Yeah.
little here in the larger plan. But I definitely think someone who's head of sales is on their way, they're down the pipeline, someone in charge of marketing, they're right around the corner. I'm very excited for that 3 to 4 to 5
Yeah.
spot range when that starts to make even more sense.
Yeah. Totally makes sense.
Are you ready, Jamie?
Mhm. What you got?
You're gonna enjoy this topic. And where'd you get engaged?
I got engaged in Chicago.
Oh, fun. Wait, why and how? Tell us the story.
So Andy, my fiance, he and I have been together almost 4 years now. And last year in May, I really loved the band The Bleachers. I'm a big Jack Antonoff fan. He's produced everything from Taylor Swift to Kendrick Lamar and back, very much a big fan. And they kicked off their tour in Salt Lake City and they had another stop in Chicago. Andy had been trying to get me out to Chicago because I'm a big architecture nerd and it's not that bad of a flight from Salt Lake, so we should go. And he said, okay, for birthday trip, I'm going to use the Delta Buddy Pass. I'm taking you to Chicago. It's going to be great. And I should have known something was up. We had talked about getting married. It wasn't a total surprise, but get in and our flight was delayed. And normally I'm the very uptight one, right? Where I'm cranky that our flight's delayed and I'm trying to rearrange our reservations. And I'm la la la, everything's fine. Nothing has ever been wrong. We're good. And he's all sorts of stressed out. So that Friday night, he actually took me to this park, and there's a much longer story with honey bears. But we got engaged. There's this big honeycomb structure in one of the parks with a city in the backdrop. And then he surprised me by flying in my sister and my brother-in-law. And we spent the weekend in Chicago and we went to the Bleachers concert Saturday night. And it was just a really fun time. Yeah.
Where was the concert? What venue?
It was at the Salt Shed, which is a really cool outdoor venue right outside of downtown Chicago. They have little shops embedded in it, which is really cool. It reminds me a lot of one in Salt Lake called Granary Live. But it was phenomenal, perfect temperature. They play a favorite song and all sorts of stuff. So it felt very kismet. Jeff Tweedy from Wilco came out and
Yeah.
sang
Wow.
incredible. Who would have thought that got tossed in? But yeah, it was a really great time.
Okay.
Jamie loves Chicago.
I spent 15 years in Chicago. So I do love that city. That's a great story. And that venue must be pretty new. I've never heard of it. So
Yeah,
very
I think
cool.
it's like a year or 2. It's very new. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll have to check it out. GWA is in Chicago in October.
Oh, love
Mhm.
that.
Can't wait to see you there.
I know. Exactly. Okay, that was a good question.
By the
Talk
way, she's
about
connected to Caleb Parker on Instagram. We just finished interviewing Caleb.
she's
So
friends with Caleb on Instagram,
yeah,
and I'm not friends with Caleb on Instagram. Fine. I see who's on the inner circle. I'm out. You guys are in. I'm out. I get it. It's totally fine. Okay. New question.
so
About
as far
mine.
as I
Or
want to
you're
go
gonna
back to the shop,
you're gonna
I
take
want to go
over.
back to
Yes.
the domain companies because I think it's so important to really get a good understanding of how some of these executives see what we do. And so you were basically sharing they're allowing you or helping you look at other locations that aren't tied to their developments. So help us understand what are conversations in that boardroom that are driving flex or not driving flex? I mean, do you have different parties that see it differently? Is everyone on board? Kind of what's the overall environment?
Yeah, I mean, I feel very grateful to get to say everyone is very much on board. The shop quickly became, in a lot of ways, passion project makes it seem like maybe a little less important. That's like not my intent. It's not like on the side, but it's something that really feels right in a lot of ways. So I feel very fortunate to have a C-suite that I report to that gets it and supports it and is excited about it and wants to keep seeing it grow. So I think those conversations get to be a lot easier because of it, right? And I think with the shop to date, we have done more like owner operated. We've like sometimes leased space and like leased it back. There's like some more complicated ownership structures in the mix there. We're actually pivoting into more management agreement deals. So that's another kind of larger conversation for all of us to just kind of learn how those are working and how they're going to work for us and building the model surrounding that. And I think with that, those conversations are long in the boardroom, but always good.
So
Uh,
how are those evolving?
they're evolving well. Yeah.
What is what's a management deal look like in your mind? Like what's a perfect middle of the fairway, perfect management deal?
Well, I don't know if one exists. I don't know if there's a perfect one that exists because for me at least, the way that I see so many of these real estate transactions is like, it's really easy to say like, oh yeah, 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 like 95-5 split 50-50 on the bottom line. Like that's awesome, right? Like would be a dream if that was real. But there are so many other considerations and factors that I'm hesitant to say like, that's exactly what I want. Cause you also don't want to like put on blinders, right? Then you get in a room and you're leaving things on the table or you're not taking advantage of deals because you don't want to be a little flexible here, a little flexible there. And being flexible has helped us do things like our Brooklyn location. I keep joking that it's a Polly Pocket shop because it's 12,000 square feet. Our other ones are like 30 or
Huh.
35,000. But in Brooklyn, we have 15 art studios going in to our co-working space. We're going to play around with
Wow.
that, right? We're going to have like people actually creating tangible art in partnership with local nonprofits, and that's based off of a community benefits agreement that community organizers in Gowanus were in charge of. And if I had blinders or if any of us did, we're like, we aren't even going to engage,
Yeah.
like we would lose out on these incredible opportunities to bring our mission to life in different places and in unique ways. Yeah, that's a long-winded way to not answer your question, but
That's so interesting. When you talk about back to the management
Well done.
agreement
Well
model,
done.
is the management agreement model in non-owned locations? Like as
yeah,
an expansion model
yeah.
for okay, got it. Interesting. Okay.
And is it only are you chasing management deals inside of other apartment developments or are you just across the board?
Across the board, but we're actually more focused on commercial deals for those management agreements. I think particularly like in New York, there are a lot of submarkets and neighborhoods that we're looking at, but there is, I mean, it's obvious for everyone on this call and for a lot of people that like there's a lot of excess office space and a lot of empty floors, right? Like what can we be doing to activate them in a way that's a little bit more meaningful than just like letting them be vacant for 3 more years and hoping you get a tenant who takes it for 5. Like how can we activate those spaces now in a way that's, like, really meaningful and impactful and good for the community that surrounds it? And I think that, the answer would be co-working there, in commercial deals specifically.
I'll say I think you may hands down, no questions asked, be the most polite guest we've ever had. That's a Beautiful question, Jamie. Thank you so much for that question.
Yeah, I know,
I'd be
totally. I
happy to
know.
answer that question. I'm like, she's so
Totally. I'm so glad
bubbly
you
and
asked that question. I know.
excited, and
I agree. I was
I love
actually
what I
like,
do.
I should start responding like that. She's so
yeah.
positive and makes me feel so good. I was like, note to self, like, yes, respond like Anne. Yes, it's too funny. I totally agree.
So we'll go back to, what does Andy do?
Andy's in sales.
Okay.
Yeah, so he works at a company called AAPC, and they sell like technical solutions for medical billing in hospitals.
Okay.
Sec
That's very cool. Yeah, very hip, very fresh. But he's wonderful. We met on Bumble,
Oh,
years ago. That's like a fun little fact for the
totally.
So what
Well,
is,
this follows a trend because is this our, no, we took a break we didn't ask Brian how he met his wife, but we had another Bumble, right? Was Will a Bumble guy or a Tinder or something? Yeah.
one of them.
yeah,
Yeah. And then remember Dave Fisher? He
I remember
claims to be
Dave,
the first
the
ever
first, the
online
first
dating.
ever.
Yeah. Like
That's the claim to fame.
christiansmeetchristians.com or something like that. It was
You're right.
hilarious.
It was Will. Now you mentioned that.
It
So,
wasn't.
and what do you think that Andy loves most about you? If you were to say 3 things that he loves most about you,
That's a tall question.
we'll make it 5 then.
I don't know if that helps or hurts. I think, ideally, it would be that I'm intelligent, that I'm kind, and that I'm funny. I feel like those are my 3 things that I wanna be, so I'm hopeful I'm crushing it and that he loves those things about me.
Now, have y'all planned to, I mean, y'all gonna engage what, last May? So is there a date plan? Kind of where are you in the process?
Yeah,
Yes, I
we're
totally
getting
stalked her, Jamie, by the way. So
Oh, okay. Yeah.
we're getting married June 6th, 2026, which I think is hilarious because it's like 666, but I guess it's only funny to me, but here I am. Just like a
right.
little joke for me. We're gonna get married at the Natural History Museum in Utah, which is this
Wow.
like beautiful building right up against the mountain, and our guests will be able to like go into the exhibits and look at big dinosaur skeletons and have a lot of fun. It's gonna be
Cool.
yeah, I really
That's
wanted to
awesome.
get married in a museum, so once we got engaged, I started to, like, look at all the different options in Salt Lake, and we toured one venue, and we fell in love with it, and that's that.
Perfect. And then you just had to find the 666 and now you're set.
No, it's the first Saturday in June. It was just a
Uh,
month, but we're
There's gonna
also
be a lot of weddings on that date. I mean, that's
oh,
a wedding day for
and then,
sure. Yeah.
like, planning the whole wedding this year in advance because I'm so scared that I won't have any of my vendors that I want then, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
plan events all the time for
Yeah.
work, so I'm like,
Okay.
I know exactly what I want, I will just, like, lay it out. Yeah.
Andy's just kicking back, letting you just rock it.
Yeah, we're doing, like, a putt-putt setup. He's a big golfer, so
Oh,
we'll have, like, mini golf, little putt-putt setup.
experiential wedding.
He really wants a tattoo artist at the wedding because we both really love and have many
A real
tattoos.
one?
A real
a re-
one.
what?
Yeah.
I'm just saying versus like,
Clean one. Jamie
Well,
says a clean one and real one.
I love fake tattoos.
we definitely want to do, like I
Uh,
planning ahead, but I've, like, been on playing around on Canva, making, like, little mock-up designs because I have so many nieces and nephews, and he does too, and,
Yeah.
for them to get to, like I want one of them to have, like his last name is Jorgensen, which is a mouthful, but, like, it's a but, I imagine them with, like, a temporary tattoo on their forehead that just, like, says Jorgensen in a heart or something. So, definitely temporary tattoos,
Okay.
ideally still real ones, but I'm a little I don't know if the Natural History Museum will be down to clown with
Oh,
that.
the
that's not
clown.
You
That's
know?
awesome.
yeah.
Like, I'm sure everyone has their limits, and that might be that, but I don't
Okay,
know.
I have a work related question that I would like to ask. You seem to, except for New York, which is a giant city, you're doing one-off locations so far.
Mm.
Lots of operators would not love that, although Kiln's kind of doing that too. Is it just that you feel like you have enough scale with 30,000 feet that you don't, you can have 2.5 team members, so you've got a little buffer? Like, is there any downside for you in only having one location per market versus kind of doing any sort of regional strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, with, like, the size of our locations being 30,000 square feet, we feel really well served for the size of cities that we're in, right? Like, New Orleans is big, it's tourism big, right? It
Uh,
just hosted the Super Bowl. I saw all the Eagles fans in the airport to prove it, but, like, they are without the tourism, like, not that big of a city. Salt
Okay.
Lake City, same thing. And I think the trouble when you put in additional locations so close together is, like, unless you're doing it either 1, right at the same time, or 2, in a market where you know there's demand, you're gonna run into trouble. So, like, I've seen people open up a location, wait 2 years, open up a second. You're cannibalizing your own
Yeah.
competition. What's the new one,
Yeah,
right?
totally. I was gonna say, it's almost worse if you wait any longer than that because then definitely everybody wants the new one.
Or
Yep.
you split the difference, and now you're 50% occupied in 2
Yeah.
places. And I think Salt Lake City, as we all know from Juicy last year, right? Like, there is a weird amount of co-working spaces.
Yeah.
Like, it is a very dense, very saturated market. First location, co-working space, Work Hive back in 2005. Like, Salt Lake has had co-working for a hot minute. In New
Wait, has
Orleans,
Work Hive been there since 2005?
been there for a long time. I'm, like,
Wow.
78% confident it's since 2005. I'm, like, not
You
100, but
might
I'm
fact check that one.
please do. I encourage fact checking for sure.
Okay.
But I think with New Orleans, it's the same thing. Like, there are a lot of smaller operators, but there's not, like, at least where we are, particularly in, like, the warehouse district, we wouldn't wanna open up across the street. But we do actually have, some expansion opportunities in New Orleans that we're exploring over the next couple of years. There's this really amazing development called, well, it used to be Charity Hospital. It was like one of the largest charity hospitals in the United States. It had been around since the French owned Louisiana. And after Katrina, it was completely abandoned. And it has been, it's a million square feet in total. We would not have a million square feet of co-working. That would be insane. But we would get like a portion of it, and then it would be a larger partnership with Domain and Tulane and all sorts of people.
Mhm.
But even that is like far enough away that I think you aren't in too tight of a
Yeah.
competition sphere.
Yeah. That makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Okay, Gio, you get one more if you want, and then I'm gonna wrap up.
Yeah, one more. Ooh, this is so fun. What's your favorite tattoo that you have?
Ooh.
Oh, I have an eyeball tattoo that I really love. You can see it. I have some carrots here too. This is an eyeball.
Ooh.
Um,
It's a swimming eyeball. Mhm.
I I remember one day I woke up and was like, "Oh, I really want an eyeball tattoo." And then I said, "Annie, that's insane. Like, you do not need an eyeball tattoo. What are you thinking?" And then 6 months later, I still really wanted it. So, went
That'd
ahead
be a
and
good test, like the 6-month wait period.
but yeah, it's definitely one of my favorites.
Okay.
It's a good one. There you go.
My question is, you're out with some friends and everybody decides to karaoke. What's your karaoke song?
Oh, I love this question. Okay, I have 2. Can I have 2
2?
answers?
I don't know if we've ever had 2. Yes.
Okay, I'm pro karaoke. I know
Okay.
some people act like they're not, but we're all pro karaoke in our hearts, okay?
Mhm.
Number 1, "Goodbye Earl" by the Chicks, or the Dixie Chicks, whatever you're gonna call 'em. Been singing that many years. It's always a hit. I
Okay.
did sing it once in Edinburgh when I was in Scotland a couple years ago. Didn't go over so well, which I
Okay.
was surprised that'd be a
Not
hit.
as culturally relevant. Okay.
Didn't care as much. And second would be really like anything by Blink-182 because I really love Blink-182 and they never really sing. They're just kind of talking. So you always sound great because you're not trying to like hit any notes. They're just like, well, it's just Blink-182. Yeah. Those are probably
Um, where does your diversity in music taste? You're a little, like, off the beaten path in your musical taste. Where does this come
um,
from?
I think it comes from being the youngest of 4, so definitely always listening to whatever my siblings wanted to, and then my mom is, like, really into country, and my dad, like, listened to a lot of Metallica, so I just kind
Mm.
of, like, came in, and if I like it, I listen to it, is my general thing, but I love live music, I love concerts, I've been to, like, over 300, I'm a big concert fan. Yeah,
Wow.
keep a list on my phone.
Okay. Dang. I
Yeah.
like it. Okay, Anne, thank you for spending time with us. We look forward to Anne's exceptional oratory skills showing up on stage soon.
Thank you.
Oh, I
So,
got it down. I got it down.
okay, good. But especially you have lots to do. You got a lot going on your calendar and you're in charge of a lot of things. So thank you for carving out the time to do this.
Well, thank you so much. I was so excited when you guys reached out, so really looking forward to listening and doing more with you guys.